gets kicked off, and the people have to go join somebody else. So now they want the vote to be counted by computer at the caucus.
Oh,
so it's going to, first of all, the count is going to be possibly riggable.
Yeah.
Without people being able to see it. Then, if that wasn't enough, if let's say Tulsi has enough to become viable, then her votes cannot be transferred to Bernie if she later loses. Then if that's not enough, there's going to be 6 days of online voting from whatever device you can get onto the internet with, your cell phone, your laptop, your computer.
Oh, so you could double fist it. You could basically have two phones in your hand and voting at the same time, sort of thing. Is that?
Yeah,
that's what it. Yeah.
Yep. So basically, the first night, if the person doesn't win that the Democratic Party wants to win, the bots start pouring in the second night.
Yep, the bots start pouring in. Yep.
Right, the bots. You have like bot farms that could just come in and sweep the whole thing.
Well, virtualization. I mean, seriously, I can create 1,000 virtual machines and orchestrate them with something like Apache Spark.
Yep.
So we'll casting votes if that's the way it's done. No, that's not a good plan. I mean, that's very many large groups like Google could create huge virtual serving farms.
Right.
I mean, that would be very easy to manipulate, some kind of whatever device kind of structured. No, it's bad. So,
right.
It's a great plan if you don't care what the people think, and you want to make sure that their wishes aren't implemented.
Right. So who's making the software and the hardware?
They haven't said who's making it.
Of course.
It's already been verified as being perfect by Harvard.
Oh,
sure.
Wow.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's a term that a technician would use. Sure.
Right. I know.
By a team of computer experts from Harvard.
Oh, Harvard, because Harvard say it's perfect? Is that? I don't know why I'm laughing, but I just think that because I've been around computers my whole life, I've never known one computer to be perfect.
No, I've been around it a little bit too, and
yeah, I know.
And what experience? I mean, they're at Harvard. What experience do they have in?
That was just my explanation when I complained about, well, how can you verify this? When you go online, there's just so many ways to hack. And they're like, no, you've got to be wrong. Our people from Harvard of this. And I'm getting this from the Democratic Party, Iowa Democratic Party.
Okay, so I have two things for that. Did they tell you who at Harvard has actually verified it? And number two, do they know that there's a professor at Princeton who actually they could contact and he actually studies voting machines that could verify whether that's
no, but if you could send me the name, I will put that on my.
Which person is that?
The absolute thing that would help us the most is many people in states other than Iowa saying that if Iowa goes through with their 6 days of online voting, that you will demand that Iowa no longer has the first caucus.
Yeah.
That is the only thing that Iowa's afraid of. You could stop them in their tracks, but it has to be Monday or Tuesday.
Monday or Tuesday this week?
Yep.
Coming up.
Who's the person at Princeton?
His name is Dr. Appel.
Okay.
Dr. Appel, Computer Science Department.
Okay.
I looked into it and I studied that department and what they were doing in the voting machines in New Jersey.
Oh, he's on this list. He was part of the people that sent the letter to EAC about the cell phone modems in the machines.
Good. Okay.
Would you be able to contact Dr. Appel and have him contact Blair Lawton, Lawten, I believe, of the Iowa Democratic Party?
If you...
You know what? I might be able to also through that email thread.
Yeah. Then whoever has my contact, just send me whatever. I'll try to contact Dr. Appel, but he's not easy to reach.
You know what?
I'd actually physically have to go to Princeton, which I'm close enough to do it. but I don't know if I could do it within the next few days.
I was going to say I'd appreciate it if you could, because this is important.
No, Mitch, actually, why don't let's get something typed up and I'll send it out. This email has like 80 people on it that are all in the election integrity stuff.
And I just read it as, to me, it looks to me like the Democratic Party is going to be throwing out neoliberals every day until maybe one can stick to the wall, like Klobuchar, Harris, Biden.
Clown car. Like I said, they're just trying the Republican tactic last time. They're like, let's just have so many that, we'll just hope one of them will be okay. That's
now, what I would do, there is a trump card.
Okay.
If they all fail, Hillary will come back into the race and rescue the Democratic Party.
That's funny.
Now, you might think I'm joking, but if you go online, you'll see that she has large venues. Most
but nobody's going to them. What's the point?
Yeah, but most of them have all but maybe 50 tickets available.
Uh-huh. Right. Oh my God.
So she's booked large venues this time in the Midwest that you typically wouldn't book unless you're going to be announcing.
If we all just had such confidence, you get shot down twice, and you're like, but I'm awesome.
You could have more confidence if you've got something on somebody and you've paid off the rest.
Yeah. True.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah.
I think the Democratic, hearing this is going on in Iowa, this makes me feel even like if I felt the Democrats were corrupt strongly before, it's even stronger. You cannot push voting on machines without understanding what the software and the hardware is actually doing, who coded it, and where is the information going, where the output is going, and whether the input is actually reflecting the output or vice versa. There's a lot of technical issues that people don't necessarily think about. And I would press the Democratic Party in Iowa on the hardware and software piece, because then those of us who are knowledgeable about it could really just, dig into it. But if they're stonewalling us, that should be news.
The person that they sent, though, wasn't that literate. He's a spokesman for the Iowa Democratic Party. He was there to teach us how to use the data system for the Iowa Democratic Party. To be honest, I was kind of leery with his answer that, you can bank anywhere completely safely, unhackable from your cell phone and your home computer. There's no reason why we shouldn't be voting from it.
Oh boy!
Well, one of the things. This just has to become public. More people just aware of the fact that these voting machines. It's proprietary software. The general public does not understand this. That they can legally hide. They don't have to share stuff. How the machines work, and that things like I was telling you before we went live, that ES&S threatened to sue Audit USA just for posting the manual of one of their machines online. So how is that we have sold, basically sold our democracy to these private companies, but the general public doesn't understand that. And when people, that's one of my things I'm a broken record on now, is I tell everyone that that's the case, and they're just baffled. They're like, what, really? People just don't know. So that's what we have to fix, I think. So.
Well, but see that because we're displacing our trust, they are empowered. Right, it could be proprietary if there was a way that it was protecting and preserving the integrity of the election at the voter, and all they were doing with carrying that through. Then it doesn't matter if it's proprietary or not, as long as what the voter counted as cast, how it can. But we do voting now is that we turn over our ballot, and we have to have trust that it's tabulated correctly, counted correctly, transported correctly, all these things. And that's where the fundamental underlying flaw is that we've displaced our trust to other people.
Right.
All those little proprietary software, centralized tabulation, all that stuff just enables shenanigans because we've displaced our trust. And that's what we have to do is we have to bring it back so that we don't have to trust somebody else. And we shouldn't have to trust somebody else with our vote.
Right.
And it's really just, it's overwhelming. It's so disheartening because, I mean, this day and age and this level of technology and the fact that people talk about like, oh, I can do my banking online and this like that. Yeah, there are two-factor authentication at the source and such like that, but we don't apply any of those standards to voting. And that's what I don't understand. These things, it's not rocket science to protect and to establish integrity and data transmissions. And John, you always talk about the cybersecurity, right?
Right.
We're operating on the World Wide Web. If we want to cut out hackers or foreign bodies influencing elections, get off the World Wide Web. It doesn't mean we have to give up technology, right? Just a private USA intranet that is not attached to the World Wide Web in any way. ComSec type standards where every node attached to the internet is known, right? Not a DHCP protocol where you can just plug in any device anywhere and cast a ballot, right?
Right.
Every node is known. We have complete authentication, complete traceability back to the source. Somebody gets on and starts spamming out votes or pulling some drag it down, identify it, corral it, and do the. So all these things are doable. I don't know why. Like you talk about, Kelly, you talked about, we were going to talk about HR1, right? So I started reading it, right? And it's like this dream list of, hey, this would, and all these things. And I just don't get it.
Bye,
it's
John. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, we lost John?
Yeah, I think he was trying to say he was going, but I'll just keep.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Keep talking. I missed it too, so.
There's no substance in that bill, right? I started reading through it, and it's talking about integrity and security and this, that. But there's no substance. It's all just like this pie in the sky dream kind of stuff. How is that law? How do we enact? I mean, is this just like the standard? Because it talks about security practices and this and that, but it doesn't set any expectations or levels of security that we're going to do. It just says, oh, we're going to be secure.
Well, the Iowa Democratic Party has announced that they have learned from other mistakes. They're not going to have any of the issues that we had with the Tim Canova, shredding the ballots or whatever. They are going to destroy the ballots immediately after counting.
Oh, great. That fixes it.
So there's no fights.
Oh.
What? Isn't it? Oh my God!
It's insane.
I missed it. It's perfectly. No, we should be able to recount the ballots 10 times.
Here's the kicker.
Well, it's not a public thing. It's private party.
Oh, it's the young club mentality.
Well, we learned that from the DNC fraud lawsuit. So.
Yes, we did. Yeah, it's a private organization. They can do what they want.
Right.
Once
Just like
again,
the private voting machines.
Yep.
Yeah. So this, to me, was the kicker. And if you read HR1, all right. Paper ballot requirement. Oh, fabulous. Like everybody keeps telling me that Stacey Abrams' group, what is it? Oh, Action something. Fair Fight Action is going to fight for paper ballots. Great. I'll believe it when I see it. She's on the board of Center for American Progress now, Neera Tanden's organization. So anyway, if they are going to do it, that's great. I'll believe it when I see it. But HR1, here's a section, paper ballot and manual counting requirements. I was like, okay, great. This is wonderful. Except, here we go. Paper ballot requirement. The voting system shall require the use of an individual, durable, voter-verified paper ballot of the voter's vote that shall be marked and made available for inspection and verification by the voter before the voter's vote is cast and counted, and which shall be counted by hand or read by an optical character recognition device or other counting device. Now, what have we heard? Where does the real fraud happen? The central tabulators.
Right.
Yeah.
So what good is this?
It's no good. It's
It's
So-
more of the same.
So when I read this, I need to learn to bookmark stuff better. But thankfully, this wonderful guy named Larry, that I think he has gone to a lot of these conferences and he knows a lot of the election integrity people. He's always posting great stuff. And I remembered this video, but I could not for the life of me think of who the guy was in the video. And so I messaged Larry on Facebook, and he knew what I was talking about. And I would love to show this. He gave me permission to show this because this is his video thing on Vimeo. It's 11 minutes long, but this is my clip for the night. Everybody okay with that? It's mind-boggling. Okay, here we go.
I might get called out in the middle. My son isn't home yet.
Oh, okay. We'll come back if you do. But it's 11 minutes and 29 seconds. So, all right. Here we go. Me and my wonderful screen sharing. There we go. Yes, I can do it. Here we go.
I am a serial entrepreneur. I've actually built a number of companies. I have actually built and sold companies that involve digital watermarking, image compression, high-speed image transmission, image switching, satellite transmission systems. And currently I'm now a partner in a Global Strategic Partners, which is a pretty full services, full spectrum solvent company. A lot of high-end guys, interesting folks, and I'm the IT geek among the partners. All the other partners have other specialties, but I don't want to live in a country where I don't believe the vote. I've traveled, I've built systems in 50 countries around the world, and I've been sent to work in some pretty unpleasant places, and I don't want to live in one. I want to live in a democracy. I want to live in a democracy where the citizens respect each other. And the most important thing is when we have a vote, I don't care if my party loses. I don't. I care that I live in a place where I have a vote that counts. Patriot way first. A loyal person to my friends and family and beliefs second. And very distantly, I'm the member of a political party. So yes, I'm a lifetime member of the GOP, but should the GOP take precedence over my nation? No. Should they take precedence over my family? No. Should they take precedence over my religious beliefs in my church? No. Do they take precedence over the Constitution? They're not even mentioned in the Constitution. It's like those are the things that should come first. And if they are not coming first, and in not coming first, we are choosing to compromise our vote. I mean, most of the Constitution actually talks about how you run an election. If you actually read it, it assigns the positions and it assigns how they're elected in enormous detail. It spends more time on that than anything else. Whether or not you like the solution electoral college, it thought it through and it created this system to say, we don't know what decisions you're going to make, but let's make sure that we're all in agreement on how we're going to make it and that we all believe it. We don't want another dictator. We don't want a king. We want to have a democracy. And I'm more than happy to spend my time and money and reputation, which I certainly have spent a lot of each, on this issue. And I'm right. And I will win. And everybody who is bad will go down. I don't actually think some technologies work well. I think the technologies that work well are appropriately scaled for the task. Computers are evil, horrific nightmares. They are stupid, stupid, stupid machines that don't understand anything, but they never forget anything, and even worse, they'll do exactly what the programmer tells them to do, but that isn't always obvious to the user. So a person who's a user at the surface level of a keyboard and a computer is having one experience, but deep inside the computer, that computer can be doing a whole lot of things that you don't know about, that the programmer told it to do, that you may or may not approve. Unfortunately, the reality is a lot of the people that are involved in the voting machine world certainly when it started. They're okay technicians. They're not great. They hire a couple of guys who are pretty good as well. So it's not that the programs can't work if they're done correctly, but the ownership who had the drive to do this are all from the deep, deep fundamentalist believer community. Now, there's nothing wrong with the deep fundamentalist believer community. Again, I love the Amish. I live in a mostly Amish community, and they're deep believers. And I have my own deep beliefs, but most people like me who are involved in computers, there's not a lot of people that view themselves as Christians first and computer programmers second. I don't know anybody at the high end who thinks of themselves that way, except for the people who own voting machine companies. So they sort of have this, well, they all donate to one party and only to the extreme wing of that party, which is my party, but the extreme wing who hates me. And I doubt that they're truthful about their intent with the machines. An unfortunate reality that on some of the more fundamentalist Christian components today, and now we're way off computers, but it relates back to what we're doing, they actually don't think it's wrong to lie to the unbelievers as long as you're working toward a greater truth for God. So if they believe that by controlling the vote, they can save the babies by packing the Supreme Court, which I am convinced this is how this all started. They got the idea of going, we have to get the true believers in office. We can't seem to get them elected. So let's follow Stalin's advice. As Stalin said, you who have the vote have no control. He who controls the vote has all the control, or some approximate translation from Russian. And so they're like, let's build the vote tabulators. And then they got down the tabulator thing, and they also said, well, what if we could also control the voting machine so that you could erase the ballot? I don't think they initially thought about hacking the touchscreens. They just didn't want to have a paper trail. It's like, the hacking is mostly done at the tabulator level. It's not, you can hack a voting machine, but you got to hack a lot of voting machines to be effective in most cases, because if the population is moving in one direction by 2%, you got to figure a way to hack 70, 80, 90 machines, quite a lot minimum, to have an impact. You can do it, but it's a lot of work. But all you do is hack one tabulator at the state level, or 4 or 5 tabulators at the county level. The future of voting, as this presentation, and they had these touchscreen machines. And I just started laughing. I saw the machine, and basically Greg Carson, who very accomplished guy, and myself and another guy who was there on his staff, I don't remember his name, we hacked into it in less than 20 minutes. We're playing with the results, changed the code around, and I basically said, this is absurd. I said, you have an unauditable touchscreen system with unauditable code. What was then Global Election Systems, which was then later bought by Diebold, which has now been sold by Diebold. That same piece of junk that we hacked into in 20 minutes in 1998 is still being used in numerous states across the country. It's junk. That's what it is. It's junk computers. Voting is a very simple process. It is a process of walking up and making a decision between 2, 3, 4 candidates or on a number of issues and checking some boxes. That is best dealt with the simplest technology to address it, and that would be paper and a pen. And that probably means you're spending 10 times what it would cost you to run each election if you just printed the paper ballot. I would say, well, my margin of error will still be 1/2 of 1%. And that's doing everything that I can to fix it. That sucks for a vote, because lots of elections, ask Al Franken, come down to, or ask Norm Coleman, either of them, or ask Saxby Chambliss today. Votes come down to less than 1/2 of 1%, a lot. That is the best you could hope for with a well-defended network, which we do not have. So as a consequence, we end up in a fundamental trap. And I should really frame the fundamental trap that's so important. In network, the fundamental trap in network systems is you can either have security or you can have anonymity. You can never have both. The reason we can stop the fraud is we know who you are and who you're supposed to be, and if we need to, we can call you. So if someone takes your information and changes it, we can go back to you as the authority and say, is this correct? And you go, no, arrest them. And I go, great, we're going to go get them. With a vote, we don't know who you are. It's anonymous. Mm-hmm. So if someone changes it, we don't know whose vote they've changed, and we can't go back and ask. And the problem with data is data security depends on digital authentication and identity confirmation. So I can confirm that you are who you say you are. I can confirm that the machine is authorizing making a transaction by the correct course, and then I can, with some degree of assurance, plus or minus 25 basis points now, make sure that it works. In the case of a vote, I don't have authentication, and I don't have identity. So all I got is a bucket of numbers, and I don't know where they came from, and anybody could change them and nobody would know. Especially if you have a man in the middle who's talking to both ends of the computers, you can make it say anything you want. The one thing you have to confirm against are exit polls. I'm a pretty simple electronic guy, and there's a whole lot of military commands and people who hire me to solve problems for them. I said, why? Because tell them the truth. You can't secure these systems because we don't know the identity of who's doing what. And you don't have the money, the time, or the training, or the expertise to do it in any case, even if you did have identity. But this guy said, he said, and he told me this, he says, yeah, he says, but he actually said, he says, I'd heard about you. He says, and I went back and I looked, he says, yeah, you've always just said the same thing. Once the genie's out of the bottle, you have no idea who's going to control it. And I go, right. And I'm like, yeah, on paperless touchscreen machines, and trust me, you're not going to be able to prove anything because it's a genie. You can't control it. If there were a paper ballot, you could go back and count it. But you can't.
Newsweek right now, and also in Agence.
Israel hacking the campaigns.
Was it Israel?
Oh, of course it was. Israel hacks all the campaigns. It may have been China as well, but there may be multiple cases. I don't know the specifics of that one, but.
Right, to determine foreign policy.
They want to know where people are going on Israel. There are little tiny things surrounded by what hostile people. They want to know in advance, and they want to get their lobbyists in the door early. You bet. They do it to everybody. I've been saying this, and my fear, my deepest fear, and now we've got this situation. I mean, you know, I've worked with the Chinese government. I've worked with the Russians. I've worked with the Israelis. I've worked with the French. But guess what? They all hack us, and we hack them. It's like we're in electronic, not exactly war, but we're certainly in electronic, vicious competition with each other. I'm terrified of the idea that China's going to pick the president, or Israel's going to make a decision. Nah, I don't want Obama not to be able to stop a filibuster because I've got AIPAC can control a few of those people. I'm going to make sure that there's 40 Republican senators. And if you're going to hack a vote, then that means you're coming after my democracy, and then I'm coming after you. And I don't care who you are.
So that was interesting. Hang on. Oh, sorry. Oh, damn it. I want it stopped. Uh-oh. Hopefully that's going to stop now. Okay. 1 second.
Well, I mean, I got to disagree in a number of ways.
Yeah, well, it's from 2008. So there I was wondering about the voting machines being owned by all right-wing Christian people. Is that still the case? I mean, we've seen such a change now that the establishment Democrats are really kind of operating like the Republicans in so many ways. So I don't know. I've just kind of started looking into like the ownership of like Dominion, as a Canadian company, and I'll have to start digging into just who these people are. I don't know. So, but what were you going to say that the main thing?
Well, I mean, one of the fundamental flaws is he somehow sees the need to authenticate the ballot to the voter as it goes through the process. And he seems not to be aware of compartmentalization so that you can authenticate a voter, right? You can pass that voter into a compartment because they've been authenticated in the first compartment. Now they're in the compartment. They are authenticated a voter, and you can hand them a ballot. As long as they fill out that ballot and cast it and voter verify it, make sure that they filled it out correctly. Again, and here's where, again, the methodology that I've been pushing is that now we want to authenticate it and preserve it, add the security there, right? And the part that he's talking about, he has to authenticate it somewhere downstream. So he's got to somehow tie that ballot back to the voter so that he can know that the voter voted that way when it was counted. See, that's the problem. Again, we're displacing the trust downstream, and then coming up with this straw man where you say all of a sudden, oh, but I got to know what the voter counted. So if we can preserve that's voters verification and add the voter, then it really doesn't matter further down so that we can maintain autonomy, right? We definitely want to maintain autonomy.
Right.
So and that's where we come in with multiple factors, security factors, right? The most simplest is an image of the ballot, right? Now all of a sudden, I've got the same ballot represented in two ways, so that I can check back and forth. Paper ballots, somebody had some white out and they changed it, right? Or serialized. I can now look at the image and say, hey, wait a minute. Voter cast this ballot and verified that the physical and the image that was made matched, right? And you can catch an anomaly downstream to see if there's any differences. Then when we use three-factor authentication, then there's a majority of the other factors that can rule which one is the wrong one. So, and then it takes away the centralization. Then you could tabulate it in centrals, although I'm pushing compartmentalizing the tabulation also, because it would be impossible to hack a distributed vote, right? If it's happening in the same way, it's just logistically impossible to hack voting machines, such a widespread basis, physical voting machines, to alter an election. If you kept those votes in a widespread distributed manner, it would be impossible to manipulate the count in all those locations. And if the count is based on the physical paper ballot, again, you can run that count over and over again and get the same results. So, I mean, a lot of what he said was accurate. The machine's going to do exactly what the machine's going to do, right? Keep what the machine does to the most simple process, because voting is, like you said, a very simple thing, right? We don't need to build in all sorts of automation and this, that. All we need to do is count the ballots, right? And integrity. So anyways, there was just a number of things. And the whole Christians taking over the voting systems so that they can do some kind of crusading, and the earth is flat and there's unicorn every clause and dust.
I'm thinking maybe that's just, I don't know. Maybe
I don't buy into all that stuff. But and Freemasons have owned every city, whatever.
Well, here's why I think, okay, that may not be the case, but the problem is the way that these voting machines are set up. It's possible. That's what's scary, is that it's possible that an organization or a group of people who think similarly on issues like that could manipulate the vote.
It was interesting to hear him say APAC now. Can give
you mean at the voting vendor then saying, yeah, that's why we need it to be publicly owned and publicly viewable. No more security through obscurity. That's just ridiculous. That empowers these people, but even we have to know much processes that are running in memory. The code could be as clean as a baby's behind, right? But if there's another process in memory or on the machine, so the security goes way deeper than just the application of voting and who programmed it. It's on that machine. Is there a modem? Does the modem have point-to-point protocol, right? Does it have SSH? Can you just log in and start flipping things? How is the data stored on that machine? That's, again, why we need to compartmentalize. The marking device should do nothing but mark a ballot. The voting station itself should do nothing but ensure the integrity of the vote, of the voter's ballot, right? Its job. And then at hand count time, we need checks, right? We don't want to trust the counters. because maybe the counter, every third vote, he's counting something that he's biased towards. We don't want to trust them. So we want to build enough layers of security in place that we don't have to trust anybody, and we know that exactly how we voted is how it is counted. Very distributed manner.
The reason that video popped in my head, I happened to catch it, like I said, it was in November when I was in Florida, and but it was because of what he says about the central tabulator, and I've heard that other places too. But I mean, this whole thing about HR1, I shouldn't be baffled. I shouldn't be surprised, but that they have that in here. I mean, it's great that HR1 is trying to do all the other things they're doing, fighting against voter suppression and the gerrymandering and all that, but we get right down to it. They're not fixing the problem with the machines. I mean, having paper ballots is great, but having it be counted on the use of a non-tabulating.
Again, you're trusting somebody else to count the ballots.
Right.
And that's what we got to break. We got to bring it back to the voter. When the voter puts their ballot and it's counted, nobody else should be able to come up with a different count.
No, wait. For purposes of this subclause, the term individual durable voter verified paper ballot means a paper ballot marked by the voter by hand or a paper ballot marked through the use of a non-tabulating ballot marking device.
Yeah, but what's the voter verifying? In that clause, all the voter's verifying is that they marked the ballot, right? We're not verifying that the automated tabulation from that ballot is how they voted.
Right.
So voter verified ballot, I mean, again, it's more of the same. That's not changing the situation.
Yeah, it's the problem with this is where the actual counting central tabulator could still be hacked, and that's what my understanding is. That's where the damage is done. That's how they do it.
So we should say voter verified tabulation.
Right. Yeah. Now I just want to make one thing really clear, is that we're not saying that we want a system where voters can be singled out and that people know who voted which way. We're saying that that the voter is who will know how they vote and will be able to verify that the system counted their vote correctly. No one is going to know who voted which way or the other except for that individual voter.
At the time when they cast their ballot, which is the same as what they're doing now, right? When I vote and I mark all the things, I verify that I voted that way, but then again, I pass my ballot on and somebody else counts it. So my verifying of that ballot is really doing no good because anybody else downstream can manipulate it.
Right.
But autonomy, there was an amount of discussions around autonomy and around the voter being able to later view their ballot, right? Because we talked about in the methodology serializing the ballots.
Right.
So there was one of the concerns was that people could be extorted for their votes, that they might have to go back to their boss and show their boss how they voted to keep their job, something like that.
Especially if they get bussed in from, where was that? That happened in the Democratic primary. There was something that happened. Was it like Vegas or somewhere where they?
Yeah, it was Harry Reid bussed in. Yeah.
Because one of the original intents was, hey, I'll just give you a receipt, and when we post all the images up online later, you can look at your receipt and you can find your ballot in the anonymous pile of ballots and verify the same there. Said, they might, get extorted. So it basically came to...
No, the easy way around that is to say, I didn't vote.
But then they lose
their
because they were demanded to vote and vote one way or whatever. That's why we just...
No one can pressure you. That would be illegal to pressure somebody into vote. If that's what's going on, then that employer would be prosecuted.
Yes, but that was the concern, and that's why
That's a ridiculous concern.
I agree. Because I think it would be nice to have all the ballots on.
Ridiculous.
I can find my ballot at the state level and see the image. That would be great. You could memorize your receipt, maybe, I don't know. But in the methodology, I kept all that, all the ballots become visible, but the serialization that ties the image to the physical ballot is just between them.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to take this show on the road and go to the NAS conference.
But we want people to critique it ahead of time, right? This is how the whole thing developed out, was tons of critiques. We want to hear everybody's take, right, what they like, this and that. And that's what I really do believe. It's boiled down to something that's just so incredibly simple, foolproof, that
right.
all we got to do is just demonstrate it.
Mm-hmm. So
anyway,
I've been I looked a little bit today because I told you I asked about it and was told that it took 9 years to try to get a system certified. Oh, I didn't fill you in on that yet, John. Sorry. And I thought, well, wait a second. I thought, we looked at the EAC and it says they're voluntary guidelines. Oh, it's Aeolus. Hi, Aeolus. Remember, it says that they were voluntary guidelines. Do you remember that? And so the EAC's response, about the wireless modems was like, well, we know they're there, and we recommend that they're not there, and it's not connected to the internet, but, oh well. And so
that's ridiculous. Security standard isn't a guideline. It's a bar that you have to achieve, otherwise you don't pass.
So right? Right. I saw Ray Lutz and I think Lulu posted about that they were collecting, I guess, recommendations or whatever for the new voluntary guidelines, right? But what is the point of voluntary? But anyway, so I was wondering, well, what does that mean to get your system certified? How would you do it? And actually, let me just...
It's red team testing, basically. But, I mean, I know how to harden machines. I do it for a living, right? So they're going to look at the code. They're going to see there's nothing malicious. They're going to look at the level of hardening that's taken place and the known security standards,
Mm-hmm.
I was on an escalation for a mini cluster. I better not say the customer because they're big, but and I was looking at their Etsy system file. Etsy system file is where you can make kernel modifications, right? And they had some commands in there so you couldn't execute off the stack. It's an old, really old security trick or vulnerability, right?
Mm-hmm.
Appreciated. It's been depreciated for years. Anyways, the point is, these things are known, right? I'm not special. I just know what the requirements are to achieve security standard.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's red team testing, great. Red team test it. As a matter of fact, go to the DEF CON kids. Let them hack it. Let them have physical access to try to hack it. Bring it on. I wrote this one. This is way back in the day. It was called supersecret.net. Basically, I wanted to prove that I could have a machine in a public place that could do things, right? So it was in a server center that I didn't control, right? And I just hardened it enough that you couldn't, even if you had physical access to it, you couldn't do anything to it. Everything was, all the data was in memory, a memory file system. If you unplug it, it dumps memory. It protects your data, right?
Gotcha.
So my whole point is that this could be done. It's not the red team testing, anything they can throw at it it's going to be nothing new. I mean, this is what the government does. This is what we do in secure spaces all the time. And that's why the guidelines thing just cracks me up, because I could just imagine First Intelligence Battalion in the United States Marine Corps saying, oh, hey, we've got some guidelines. No, either the machine is hardened and it passes a STIG test to some degree, or it doesn't get in the door.
Right. I just don't get it. So,
right? Either it passes the security tests and the guidelines or whatever. They shouldn't be guidelines. They should be standards.
Yeah. Okay. So each state. Okay. This is from what is this? NCSL, National Conference of State Legislatures. Let's see. What do voting system standards address? Okay. Each state sets its specific standards for voting systems in statute and or administrative rule. These can be based on the voluntary standards set by the EAC or not. The most common issues that voting system standards are likely to address are security, functionality, privacy, usability, accessibility. So a secure voting machine, one that can't be tampered.
Define secure.
I don't know.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, we want a secure machine. Well, define secure for me.
Well, Florida must not. I mean, I don't know how many other states have those machines with the cell phone modems in, but I'm assuming a lot.
See, that's ridiculous. If it plugs into an internet, breaking.
Go ahead. Jump in. Jump in, ALS. You're here, aren't you? Just off video?
Yeah.
Honestly, IT stuff is not my forte.
Oh, okay. I thought you were trying to say something there. Okay.
No.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Well, the reason I'm bringing this up is because what I'm seeing is, well, why couldn't your system get not certified, accepted to be used? It would be on a state by state basis, I guess. So it's basically saying that they can follow the EAC guidelines or not.
And you see, that's the thing. I don't care if they got guidelines or not. I'm going to build it to the highest security standard available. Right? That's
so if we go around the usual channels, and just what would you do? I mean, take it straight to the state, the people that make the decisions
Yeah, that's the Secretary of State. They're the ones that are going to do the red team testing and the certification of it. But again, these things it's a low bar, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can build machines so that their standard of security is higher than what the state's expecting.
Mm-hmm. So
they can red team test it, they can do anything they want, right? Mm-hmm. And as long as it's built, and then the internal integrity, right? It's not that the machine has a wall around it. It's that the integrity of the data is being preserved in such a way. And that's why I took it up to a methodology, because everyone wanted to build down at the machine level and tell me how they were going to do it at the machine. But it's really the problem in our voting infrastructure is that we're just doing it wrong. It's not that we're doing it completely wrong. It's just that one little piece where we hand off our ballot for somebody else to do the tabulation and the counting.
Right.
That's law.
Right.
Right.
And HR1 thinks that's a great idea still, apparently.
Well, and HR1 has it still. Like I said, but, we were talking about this earlier about the central tabulation and such like that. And that's a hacker's dream, or somebody that let's not call them hackers, call them somebody that wants to manipulate the election. Mm-hmm. They're going to go for the biggest bang for their buck, the concentration. Right. That's why, like, when they were talking about the Cozy Bear and the Fuzzy Bear attacking the registration systems, causing the party affiliations to flip, causing the provisional ballots to be distributed, they were attempting to cause chaos and to instill distrust into our system, right? So they were attacking at the prime location, voter registration, right? If you get this chaos around, cut it right off at the voter registration. And then we've seen, how moving us to a central facility allows compromise through chain of custody issues, right? Yeah. And that's why we can't do that stuff. That's why we have to. The less the data moves before it's authenticated, the better.
Oh, I saw on YouTube several people have taken that video from Broward County that where they showed the ballots being moved, like from the cars, and have labeled the videos voter fraud. But
interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
it's election fraud.
It's election fraud, but this is a big problem with people mixing up the terminology. But anyway,
but it's junior custody issues right there.
Right.
I mean, that somebody, we trusted somebody to take this box of ballots somewhere else to be counted, right? What an opportunity. We've handed, the process is so wrong that we're handing people the opportunity to manipulate it. And that's, it's just too many vectors of attack here. And that's what we got to close down.
But what's so weird is that, okay, on the right, all they say is voter fraud. There's nothing, no discussion that I can find or have found yet about the machines. They're just saying that people are, ballot stuffing, and they call it voter fraud. There's no focus whatsoever on the machines. But,
yeah, I mean, that's a poor label. They could call it election fraud.
Yeah, a lot of people mix that up anyway, but
it's the same as climate change and global warming, right?
Oh, yeah, I guess.
It's such a poor way to illustrate the problem, and then people get all hung up at that level, and they never dig into the real problem.
Right, the real problem, right. It's almost like, I think maybe that's by design, too, but anyway, but I was really curious, well, is it going to take 9 years to get your system, like, what's the process, So this is...
In California, it's... From what I saw, the average time was well within a year. Now, flawed systems like, I'm not going to say, sorry. Some systems get on there and they sit on there for a year or more, and then Brent.
I figured that's what you were going to say. Oh, it's Garden Gnome. We haven't seen him in so long. Hey, John, you haven't met... Well, he goes by Garden Gnome. Do we even know your real name? I don't think we do.
You do, Kelly.
I do?
You have my email and all that other crap.
I have your email, but I don't think it says that. Your name in it.
I think I told I don't know.
Oh, well, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Should be up there.
Anyway, Garden lives...
Hi, John. How are you?
Hi.
It's alive.
Garden's alive. Very funny it was.
You didn't freeze to death in northern Michigan yet?
No, I ordered some snowshoes, right, and when they got here, the straps were all messed up. So I sent them back, and it's like been 2 weeks, and they're all like, "Oh, we're gonna fix them."
He's got this.
So I haven't been able to do much hiking or anything outside.
Well, it's still cold, isn't it? I mean, it's disgusting here.
It's freezing here.
Yeah, it's not. Well, it's like a high of 42 or something today and raining in North Carolina.
Well, for like a week, it was like it didn't get above 5 degrees.
5?
No, thank you.
Damn cold.
Yeah. Okay, I just want to read this. This is the last part here, but so I guess if you've been listening a little bit, or you were around last weekend or the last time we were on, right, Garden? Have you heard John talk about his voting system at all?
I've heard parts of it, yes.
Yeah. So we're talking about going to the National Association of Secretaries of State conference. Just, I don't know, might be possible. So anyway,
to the bus.
This says local jurisdictions select and purchase voting systems, but before they are able to do so, the system must go through a testing process to ensure that it meets state standards, and in some cases, federal standards as well. Voting system vendors are responsible for ensuring that the system is tested, often through a federally accredited voting systems test laboratory. You know all about this, right? Okay, to the required standards. Once testing is complete, approval is issued at the state level, and local jurisdictions may purchase the system. Well, what if we got candidates behind this, and each, local, start out small, but so you don't have to take this to the federal level. That's all. It just seems like it could be done, at least a start.
Right.
Okay, so 38 states.
Getting them on board with the methodology. Again, I wanted to start very high level so that we can all get on board, and so that we would get out all the concerns and the points, and to find that compromise. Because when I first started, there was a big camp that was like hand counted paper ballots and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was the other camp that was talking about using Bitcoin or the blockchain.
John was talking about
and that's what they were like, oh, blockchain, it'll save the world. I'm just like, whatever, like blockchain never gets hacked either. Blockchain's vulnerable.
John Lancelot was just talking about that. What's the country that did a blockchain voting? We were talking about it last time. Oh, crap.
See, blockchain is, again, it's a transport, trying to secure a transport over an open wire, and it's vulnerable at the endpoints, right? Somebody's holding the keys.
Right.
Secure transmission, I don't care how many times it's ledgered, at the endpoint, somebody's got the keys. And also, blockchain counts on basically a majority to rule what the ledger should be, right? So if I'm Google or some kind of quantum computing sitting in the middle, and I come up with 10,000 virtual machines, and I've got 10,000 ledgers, I'm going to have the majority. And I'm going to tell everybody else that's legitimate, hey, you got the wrong count, here's the real count. Although it's not the real count, it's the made-up count. So all that stuff is flawed.
You lost me, but I'll trust what you're saying.
Well, these are known flaws in blockchain.
Okay. John said something about that. You guys are going to have to talk because I can't translate. But yeah, he mentioned exactly what you just said, though, about it being over unsecure, whatever.
Yeah. Again, the only way, and this is how we do security, is we compartmentalize. Mm-hmm. It's the only way. You can't transport in the open secure data. Otherwise, it's subject to compromise just by the fact that it's being transported. That's why we got to localize and compartmentalize at the polling place, or at least the precinct. Mm-hmm. But suggest the polling place and try to automate it so you don't have to have some kind of computer science trained staff there. It should just be rolling paper ballots through. And that's why in the methodology, we're using the same machine that the voter casts their ballot on is the same machine that the hand count is conducted through, right? Same software, same everything, all within inside the polling place. That way the data never leaves. The physical ballots never leave. The ballot images are preserved, not at the voting station itself, but place of server. So it's just it's not hackable. I mean, but it's again the point was it's compartmentalization. That's
right.
Well,
we just have to figure out, I don't know, what hoops to jump through, I guess.
Well, it's the secretaries of state.
Yeah.
They call the shots.
Right.
So if a better mousetrap, we let it sell itself.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So, hey, Gordon, what's on your mind lately?
Well, as far as this topic, I agree with Brian. Like a lot of these, quote, safeguards, the employer might, these things were applicable in the 1920s. They're no longer applicable now.
Right.
And they use these, these methodologies to find excuses to cover up fraud.
Right.
Like, we can't give you a copy, or we can't make this information available because of XYZ. Well, XYZ, like a lot of the times, X and Y at least, maybe Z is valid, but 2 out of the 3 are invalid.
It's like the Florida rule. Sorry, I'm going to interrupt just a sec. But the Florida rule that said where you can hide the votes if it was 1 to 9. And they say, it's to protect the identity of the voters or something.
That's insane.
Yeah, I know.
It really is.
But yeah, so that's
absolutely insane.
That's the perfect
Yeah,
example.
I think that the solution to these problems is going to be found in the courts, not in the electoral process. So I differ from you guys in that sense.
You mean actually changing?
You're not going to be able to politically pressure the Secretary of State or your political representatives to enact the kinds of reforms you want.
Well, they're fighting in the courts, like to force the election officials to save the ballot images, that kind of stuff, from these machines. But this is tied up forever in court.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough going through the courts. Like 9 times out of 10, you lose. And that one time that you get a victory, you get a little bit of ground.
But what does that even do? They can just change the machine to force the election people to save a ballot. I mean,
it requires a variety of reforms. I mean, Diebold, like, why is Diebold even involved in the voting processing?
Right.
Why aren't those people, in front of a judge?
Well, here's the problem, though, and this is the way I look at it, because I look at a lot of things in terms of economics. You have, again, the Secretaries of State make the decisions. Well, if a big company like Diebold comes to them with a shitload of money and says, here, implement our machines and we'll go ahead and pay for your next election, they're not going to turn that down most of the time. So therein lies a large part of the problem is our very corrupt capitalistic system, where basically everything is for sale, including our representation. That's the problem.
I was thinking like, oh, it'd be great. They can say, you take John's system and say it'll save the states all this money. But they're not actually interested in doing that, are they?
No, they're not interested in that. What they're interested in is who's going to pad my pocket, essentially. That's what they're really interested in. That's the problem. We're dealing with a great deal of greed and corruption here.
See, but the defense against that is public awareness and public pressure, right? If a Secretary of State selects a substandard voting system because his pocket's been lined, and everybody, his constituents know that he picked the inferior product, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I said the system's not going to fix itself. This has got to come from the bottom up. Everybody's got to have an awareness of the pressure that we're pushing upwards.
Mm-hmm.
And that go after the secretaries as decision makers, but they have to be held accountable.
Right. What happened?
Wolf-pack.com, right?
What?
Don't get money out of politics.
Oh.
Say that again, Kurt.
Right. He's got to inject some TYT stuff in here.
Oh no! Don't do that, man.
So you bought into the Cenk Uygur fan club, huh, Garden?
Yeah,
All people.
I steal
All people.
This is an ongoing joke.
Cheat. Whatever it takes.
Yeah.
So, Kelly,
Well, at least it's not David Pakman. At least it's not David Pakman.
Yeah.
His arguments are getting more and more absurd as time goes on.
No, they've always been absurd.
They've always been pretty absurd.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the closer we get to election season, the more we see these pundits go into their own corners and get more and more extreme and absurd.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, what were you going to say, John?
Kelly, did you read up on the reforms that are happening in Colorado about the Electoral College?
Not that closely. I was more focused on reading HR 1, and I just saw that, popular vote.
It's pretty interesting, except I think they go a little too far. Basically, what they want to do is they're going to assign their electoral, their votes, from their electoral votes to the popular vote. But they've put it to the popular vote of their state. They're doing it to the popular vote of the nation, which kind of defeats it. If they would have kept it at the state, but it made a lot of sense because that's kind of the electoral representation is supposed to be doing anyways. But when you get to the national level, they're basically going against what the original intent was, that heavily populated states wouldn't overrun the less popular states.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that made sense.
I liked it if they would have kept it at the popular vote of that state.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, thanks for filling me in. I didn't realize that. No, I just kind of glanced at what, I don't remember what article it was, and then I got sidetracked reading.
They got a lot of support. I think they only needed 12 more states to get on board, something like that. It's not outside of the...
What is this? Onward together. It's funny. Speaking of pundits, we've talked recently about. Well, I ran across a couple different right wing things on Twitter. I don't know how, but I mean, my God, they have a lot of followers. I mean, I think that, speaking of being in a bubble. Oh, that was before we were live. Sorry, with John, but about the left being in this bubble. I mean, you got to go and watch some of these things. These Hodge twins, and I forget the other names, but. I mean, they've got like double the followers that Jimmy Dore has. You know any of these? Anybody?
That's scary.
Yeah. But
in a polarized world.
I know, but I think, I don't know. Sometimes I just, we all are kind of we're not watching mainstream media. We're not watching TYT anymore. But
we're certainly not watching David Packard.
No.
I have only ever heard him once, and I think it was when Ray McGovern was on his show or something. I don't know. I couldn't stomach it. I haven't really heard much of him.
The other day,
I feel embarrassed to know that I share the same generation with him.
Oh.
I on behalf of millennials everywhere, I want to apologize that we created
What was that, Gordon? The other day, what?
I watched this Pac-Man clip the other day, right? And he takes these callers. And Pac-Man, apparently, it wasn't in the clip, had just got done, bitching about some Tulsi supporters or something like that, right? So this caller calls in and says, "Hey, David, you keep arguing for, fair and open discussion, like taking the oppositional side in good faith, as if they believe their own arguments. But I continually see you accuse people of bad faith, that they're, Trump supporters, or they're just too stupid to understand the arguments or whatever."
Mm-hmm.
So David replies to this. He just Socratics him and goes, "Well, blah, blah, blah," and asks him some question and takes him down this fucking garden path and never answers the question. But the caller's point was valid.
Right.
David is always called, we have to unify and blah, blah, blah. And then he turns around 5 minutes later and is, calling people Maduro dupes or something.
Yeah, you know what? That's the problem with David Packman. Is just that this is the problem with David Packman and the Sam Cedar crowd, or even Ben Dixon. It's just the idea that because I have a college certified education, that this has now led me to become the master of the fucking universe. I mean, don't get me wrong. These guys are sharp. I'm not trying to deny that they aren't intelligent. And David Packman is, to his credit, I think has given one of the better descriptions of socialism I've seen from liberals. That's not saying a whole lot, mind you. But that's what bothers me about it. It's that I know that these people are capable of putting in the intellectual work and rigor. It's just for whatever reason as soon as they choose fucking not to. And I'm not sure if this is they get if it's just anything that remotely touches what they think is right wing. There's just an automatic trigger warning.
Mm-hmm. That's what it seems like to me. I mean, you guys
or if they're being intentionally disingenuous for the sake of their own political motivations.
Do you guys remember? I'm just gonna say Progressive Army, and there are some great people in there. So I'm not bashing that group, the writers or anything specifically. No. But I don't know if
I'll still stand Nick Nolan for my life.
Oh wait. Well, that's not who I'm thinking of. But anyway, do you guys remember, this was a while ago, when Caitlin Johnstone came out and said, we need to align with some right-wing people to basically take down, the media, and I don't remember if she was saying deep state.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Now, I've said this 1,000 times, but I think she made a big mistake, saying Mike Cernovich. Pick somebody.
No one should have to align with Mike Cernovich.
Right, I agree.
Mr.
However,
Why would you want to align with Mr. Super Juice of all things? The guy.
Oh, I don't know. I don't even know that much. I just know. I mean, I just think it
let
was
me
a
just
really
say
bad
sex serum.
example. It was a very bad example, and I don't know if she really actually talked to him or what. But anyway, this chat that I was in, and this actually came up not too long ago because I called this out in a Twitter debate where I was being not exactly smeared. They were smearing Tim Canova, and I jumped in and pointed out, oh, you put this. He was just wearing a red hat, and you tried to make it like he was wearing a MAGA hat. And anyway, he's becoming this MAGA person. And I'm like, yeah, you guys, this group, what you just said, Aeolus, is so true. It's like if you say anything that even is remotely like aligning with someone that might be even libertarian or at all what they think of as to the right, they lose their minds. Okay, and so what I witnessed in this chat. And I said it on Twitter without saying any names, and the guy kind of shut up about it. I said, look, I watched this chat for 4 weeks, and it started out with, criticizing Caitlyn for saying that with Mike Cernovich, that was a good alignment, which I can understand. But I watched it devolve into critiquing her writing, which became trashing her writing, and this was a largely female group, a chat group, and it devolved into attacking everything about her appearance. I mean, it was nasty. It was so ugly. Yeah. And I'm like, you are going to sit there and point at people when they're misogynistic and, say stuff about women's appearance and things like that. Yeah, you're doing that in here. And it was so bad. And that's what I noticed of that. I don't know what to say, that group, that segment that I guess is anti-establishment Dem, but they are so still in that category that they can't possibly I guess they probably think we're, I don't know what they think, that we'd align with Cernovich or something, but they just lost their minds, and they were so nasty about her, and I just couldn't believe what I was reading. It just kept going.
You know what? All I'm going to say is that it's okay to have a similar fucking opinion. It's okay to have a similar opinion with somebody you otherwise would disagree with. I mean, are vegans supposed to swear off vegetarianism because Hitler was a vegetarian? I mean,
yeah.
This is ridiculous.
They get ridiculous.
I mean, that's a ridiculous moral statement to make in and of itself. Mm-hmm. But even if you were morally culpable, if you share the same either political, social, or lifestyle choices as somebody who would otherwise be vehemently designated a monster, or at least whether it's within yours or society's view, that doesn't mean that you have to align with them 100%. I may agree that The Last Jedi is a piece of shit movie, but that doesn't mean I'm going to go on Jeremy Grimes and join Geeks and Gamers to talk about how bad feminism is.
But they almost seem like they're there to serve this purpose, to make sure. I would put those people in the category of they're anti-establishment Dem to the point of, oh no, but we're still any blue will do. We can't go that far. We've got to jump in and support Gillum. And all I can refer to is what I told about. It was Miami Gator that did that about, and he was part of Progressive Army. That said all that about Tim and tried to make it look like he was wearing a MAGA hat in this photo he doctored. But I feel like they're almost there to serve this purpose of keeping people, make sure they don't go to the Green Party, or I don't know why do they do what they do.
I mean, I understand where they come. Well, I can understand to a degree where they come from, just from a logical perspective. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I don't discount, but I'm not outright discounting it. But here's the thing, that is the base point of which I try to reach them from. I don't necessarily think that they're crazy for thinking the way they do. I just have a tactical disagreement with them, or at least that's how I always perceived it. That's and that's fine. You know, we have tactical disagreements all the time. I mean, there's people in here who have who supported Bernie, some who have supported Yang, some who support Tulsi, and we're able to get together and talk our disagreements out like normal fucking human beings. But the problem becomes when people refuse to actually listen to one another,
and they attack.
Their opinion is more has already passed the smell test for the rest of humanity, and that is something that I don't think people like. And I know Ben is like, I know somebody like Ben Dixon can be petty, but he's also shown that he can actually recognize the certain limitations in other people's worldview points to at least attempt to form a dialogue with them. So I don't understand why the overwhelming amount of vitriol needed to have that disagreement. I just think it's ridiculous.
My problem with that camp, and I'll just say, I guess the activist writers, the media, indie media personalities in that category, is that they participate in vote shaming the rest of us that are out of that, and we'll vote green, we don't care. That they are constantly in this attack mode against people with a differing opinion. That's my main problem with them.
Yeah.
You know?
Which is why I the whole thing with David Pakman, it just comes across as really strange. I mean, I understand why he's doing this is because Bernie is already his guy, and he's going to ride that horse until either Bernie crashes on the convention floor or gets elevated to what seems to be a pretty inevitable candidacy.
I think they're waiting to just slip Kamala Harris in there.
They probably are, but but the Democrats are also kind of in a precarious position where I can see that definitely happening, but I could also see them not wanting to take a second risk and double dip on their mistake on 2016. I can So
no, they won't do it that way. It'll be different. They won't do it that way. I don't know. Maybe they're hoping Bernie's old and he'll croak, and so then it's just it'll be whoever's running. It may
just end up being that they try and play it out the route that they took with Obama. It's just sort of like a hope. Well, we hope that he goes out.
Right.
Yeah. But not the thing with David Pakman's whole thing is it's just sort of you do realize this is somebody who's otherwise politically on your side. You do realize that this is a person who, if things get contested on the convention floor, you're going to need their votes.
Right.
I'm not entirely.
I don't know why are you intentionally trying to piss off people who are nominally on your side just because of a tactical disagreement? First off, how fucking petty do you have to be to intentionally shoot yourself in the foot just to spite somebody for having a separate political opinion? Second of all,
did I misread something on this, John?
And I know that may sound somewhat hypocritical given our stance on Clinton, but the difference is that Clinton actually cheated. So there was an additional moral component to that. It's just sort of that sort of adds to the, if you don't proctor your candidacy legitimately, then what basis is there for continued support, for a transfer of support? You've fundamentally broken the right of contest by doing that. So, but here, David Pakman's just engaging in this is preemptively. It's why? Why would you do that?
Oh, cool, John. Sorry, I'm listening to you, Ayla.
As am I.
The commission.
So do you know anything about this Help America Vote Act?
HAVA? Yeah, I mean, that's from 2002. Are you talking about HR1? more recent, like?
Well, it's the grants. Like, it appears that's, what was it, subtitle?
Yeah.
3.
Wait, this is okay. Yeah.
Oh,
I didn't know this part.
The
Okay.
Help America Vote Act. It looks like there might be a road to grants.
Oh, I see. That's where you're at. Oh, okay. To replace a voting system.
See, they're saying they're going to give the availability of grants to the state. So I was trying to where really we'd have to target secretaries of state since they're making the decisions. But
right.
You said if you had candidates or state officials, they would be eligible to receive these grants. There was also for replacing the voting system. There was also grants down here for. There was other grants. Hold on, let me go back up to the table of contents. It was under Title III, under Security, Voter Access.
Yeah, I have to admit, I have not read this whole. This is HAVA. Okay.
It's interesting. This isn't HAVA. This is the new one that you were talking about. HR1.
Oh, that's HR1. But where does it say something?
So.
There was the establishment of best practices section that looks like it might be interesting.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. I saw HAVA, so I was confused.
Yeah,
Sorry.
HAVA is mentioned right here. Okay. Availability of HAVA requirement payments. But they had some interesting things in here.
Because HR1 amends some of HAVA, am I right?
Yes, there's all sorts of...
That's the whole point. Okay.
But
it's not going to pass anyway. It's not actually going to pass.
There's a treatment of exempt states, so there are states that are exempted from this act. You have to find out what states those were.
Okay, there are states that don't fall into the categories for the testing and certification. Maybe it's Alaska, California. Do what?
Sorry.
Alaska, California, Kansas, and Mississippi. Wait a second. Yeah, 4 states. No, wait. Hang on. 8 states have no federal. No, I'm sorry. You know what? I've got to read more to understand all this. It's very confusing, obviously. I mean.
Oh, here it is. Grants for risk limiting audits.
Okay.
You could get. So not only a grant to replace the voting system, but to also show that the system able to produce risk limiting audits would be another source of revenue or funding.
Lulu talks a lot about those. I don't fully understand. It seems to me like, I've heard Ray Lutz talk about the audits and how they just set it up where they know it's going to be one of like 5 places that they're going to audit, and then they know how to. And then they make sure those are.
Yeah, Ray's done a tremendous job.
If you look at one, then good luck, because it's the commission shall make each grant eligible to each state with respect to the regular scheduled general elections for federal office. Risk limiting audits described in part. A risk limiting audit is a post-election process, and one is which is conducted in accordance with the rules and procedures established by the chief state election official in the state in which the requirements, blah, 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 blah. So there you go. Good luck getting through the chief state election official.
Oh, boy.
Because they will roll the dice on you as soon as you try to, fuck around with them. They'll change things up. No. Maybe they'll just straight up say no and not give you an explanation. That kind of thing has happened.
Who is this? Is this the Secretary of State?
It would depend. The chief state election official would,
of the state. I guess that's Secretary of State.
State to state.
Jeez. How did we get to this place in this country?
So you're not going to be able to get through one if, you'd have to be careful. You'd have to navigate it. Maybe you could get, past that. But most likely they would want you to play some kind of a game in order to get, get the grant.
My idea of risk limiting audit would be just running all the paper ballots through the machine a second time. And as long as the first time, that's 100% audit.
So you'd have to go through the courts. What would happen is you would go, this is a risk limiting audit. like, fuck you, state election official, like, you've denied us one too many times.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd have to go through the court. Because, like, maybe you have maybe you do have a sympathetic chief state election official. Lucky you.
Hmm.
but,
Not likely. Yeah, not likely. I don't know. I guess I better dig in and read all of this fine print.
Security stuff was kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading through that. Right in the very beginning, internet registration.
Okay.
There was some good stuff. What do you guys think of same-day registration? I kind of like that idea.
Yeah,
personally.
I think that's good. Yeah.
I have no problem with it.
our technologies allow for it. This isn't like 1980.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem. A lot of what's in HR 1 is good, but it's just that when it comes to the actual voting machines, I don't see a fix. It just.
So here's the security stuff.
I don't see a problem with a national registration. So you just show up.
Yeah.
And your transaction shows you moved to that place, and you can't vote in a second.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I can go to my ATM and pull out $5 and not go to another ATM and.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Cyber and risk trading. Well, yeah. So we're gonna go crash the NAS party. I saw that. I was looking at the schedule, and Krebs will be there.
That should be interesting.
That'll be fun.
When is this?
Christopher Krebs. He's the DHS guy that just sounds. I don't know. If you listen to the C-SPAN hearing and he's talking about scanning, he just. It's just absurd.
When?
The NAS conference is the end of June, like June 30th to July 3rd, I think, in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So, I don't know. I'm kind of thinking about going. If we can, well,
Santa
we have
Fe
to.
is cool.
Yeah, I would like to see it, except I don't like to fly, so this is going to be a really big deal because last time I flew was to the People's Summit in June of 2017, and before that, the last time I flew was 1992. I don't like flying. So anyway, but that's a crappy drive from North Carolina to New Mexico, so I don't think I'll be doing that. But if we can get in, the thing is anyone can attend the conference, as far as I understand it. You just buy tickets. But as far as like having, the demo, where you could show your system, John, I think, it said like sponsors or something. I don't know what you have to be in the club.
Yeah, how do you become a sponsor?
You have to be in the club, as George Carlin says. It's a big club,
Okay.
and you ain't in it. But you have to.
Where do we get our funny hats?
Yeah, right.
And the same thing kind of goes with these grants. Like, a lot of these grants are pre-selected for friends and family. Like, people
Yeah,
like
here's another
state
grant
election.
section.
Uh-huh. Interesting.
See more grants. Oh, wait, is this the same one? Did I just back up again?
I don't think so.
Huh. System security improvement.
Actually, let me read this, see if you can make sense of it. What it said about attending. Anybody can go, but it's, let's see. Corporate Affiliate Advisory Committee. I'm sure we can join that.
This Help America Voting Act, I mean, I guess I would have to look more into this.
Yeah, that's from, I guess that was 2002. I started reading it, and it gets a little...
Well, it seems to be the basis of, like, a good part of this document.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Right, yes.
Here's your assessments.
Oh.
Security risk and vulnerability assessments.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of not really saying anything.
Well, then you could go and look at these past
Wait, what does
reports.
that say about-
Annual reports, it says, annually thereafter, after 2026. So you could look at the past reports and try to, glean some data off of that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, here we go. Exhibitors. Okay. Exhibit tables will be located at the hotel and blah, blah, blah. Providing
Ooh, that's a good idea.
Right, well, that's what I was thinking. Providing continuous conference traffic adjacent to the meeting space, NAS will provide a 6-foot table with tablecloth and 2 chairs. Space is limited to 25 exhibitors and will be assigned on a first-come, first-served basis after May 30th. Exhibit space is limited and will sell out. The option to exhibit will only be offered to corporate affiliates and conference sponsors. What does that mean?
It means I got to call Uncle Larry and try to get a corporate sponsorship.
Right.
Ah, okay. Uh-huh.
It means that you had to pay the staff a large amount of money.
Wow. So there's the deal. That's what we have to, hurdle you have to get through, I guess, to have it there.
I exhibited one that I think the minimum you could sponsor was $700 per person and show.
7 for a booth?
No, just
Per attendee.
700 is if you wanted to display a poster. and they have racks and racks of this. This was in Washington D.C. and they had just
You're
racks
talking
and racks.
about the last NAS conference?
No, this was a different conference.
Okay.
Company I worked for was submitting a bid on something. And
I see.
I got balled out really bad because there's procedures you're supposed to follow. And I followed all the procedures, but my boss had already paid the congressman's secretary to put ours in the pile of the ones that was going to be accepted instead of the pile that did it correctly.
Yep.
Right.
That's how it works.
Yep.
How accessible are secretaries of states? I mean,
It works the same with people on grants.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I guess we'll just go around knocking on
Go ahead.
office doors. I don't know.
I mean,
Sometimes it could be rather surprisingly accessible. These are not like the feds. You just call up and make an appointment.
really, we should do
Yeah.
it. We should just start making the rounds, I guess. Make appointments and travel.
There we go. Sounds like fun.
I'm
Except-
going to rework the presentation and make it a lot. My mom called and she said I made it too complicated. She said simplify it. My mom.
Oh, right. Well, that's why I told you I was making jokes about that you should paint happy trees or something while you were doing your demonstration and make it more entertaining or something. I don't know.
Or come up with a new acronym for who you're representing.
I think
The
What do you mean?
donation group from Israel or something.
Oh. No, I think we just need to break it up a little bit. Maybe let me ask some questions in between or something like that. Because I know you don't feel like you're being technical, but whenever we're talking about something we understand really well. I mean, I noticed this in the election integrity community. I had the hardest time following John Brakey. I mean, it was it took me a while, and because you're so down in it, you're speaking this certain language, and you don't realize that people are 3 sentences back going, huh? And that's just to make it for general
Let's do
public
it.
to understand.
Technology has become such a big part of the election integrity discussion. It's unavoidable.
Well, right,
Yeah.
but they forget that the average person doesn't know that stuff. I mean, I was at that the Broward County election headquarters, and John's looking in the window and he's rattling off all this stuff about tandem systems, and I'm like, I have no idea what he was talking about. I mean, it took me 2 days to figure out what all he meant, because he's this machine and this number, and all the people that he talks with knows exactly what he's talking about. But they've been in it for a decade, so they know this debold machine does this, and other people don't know that stuff.
Well,
and
we
their
need
eyes
voting
glaze
systems
over.
that the average citizen can grasp.
Right, we do.
Yeah.
And that they can go back, they can verify
Mm-hmm.
their vote was counted, they voted a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
and it isn't really that complicated.
Right.
Some basic things. Verification is pretty easy. Making sure voters get hard copies of their activity. Pretty damn easy.
You would think.
I wanted to put all the ballot images at the state level up and then provide data mining tools so that any average citizen could mine through all the ballots and, glean whatever information they want.
Mm-hmm.
Provide everything. Provide the tools.
Yep. It should all be out in the open, all of it.
I think
100%.
I think I will contact this whoever here and find out exactly what it means to have to conference sponsors. What would it take? And we'll see. I mean, maybe it's not worth going to, other than, well, I mean, you could even though you don't have a booth, you could talk to people and have something set up, or I don't know, something on video that you could point people to, or I don't know.
I could wear a T-shirt and a cape.
Well, if you guys go out there, you'll be cheating yourselves if you don't rent a car and spend a day just driving around up to
Taos. Yep.
Or
in Mexico.
Yeah.
I want to do that. Yeah, I definitely do.
Another place where you meet people are they usually have a luncheon.
Right. Well, hey, the best part about all those conferences I've mentioned earlier that I've been to is just the people I've met and talked to. And it's just when you go to those things, I mean, I don't know if you're going to really be able to talk to DHS, but, just being there around other people that might be interested in hearing what you have, I don't know. We
did the presentation and the logic of the machine itself. I'm just going to really try to drill in on that to show where all the checks are, the checks and balances.
Mm-hmm. All right, and I'll see if I can find out what it takes to actually have a spot at the table, but it doesn't look like we can do that. But anyway,
that'd be fun. I could get some attention.
At least it's in a kind of cool place, like you said, Gordon. There's other stuff to do and see, and it's right before the 4th of July weekend, so it's June 30th to July 3rd. So that'd be kind of cool.
My boss lives in Albuquerque.
Oh, okay.
Albuquerque's awesome. I'll see if while you guys are chatting, I'll see if I can pull up some New Mexico.
Oh, that's right. You lived down there for a while, didn't you?
Yeah, I lived in Arizona, but I traveled all throughout the
Well, the thing is, John, I'm sure that other John Brakey, I'm sure will go to that. Other election integrity people will be there for sure. So I would think.
Yeah, I still want to present to those people directly and to field all their questions. I mean, the more
I know, I agree. I've sent it out a couple of times to the email list. There are only 6 people in that group that regularly respond. So, and I did talk to John about you, and he remembered talking to you, but I don't think he knew the system. So. Yeah,
no, we've talked in the past when I was trying to develop it. He put, Ray Lutz had input, Jim Soper had input. They all, I mean, I was listening to anybody.
We just need to get everybody on the same page. Why can't everybody get on the same? It just makes sense. Then it would actually gain traction, right?
Yeah.
Oh, well. All right. Well, I think I'm reaching my limit of sitting up now. So, I'll give it a couple more minutes. Mitch, did you want to say any more about your conference?
Well, I do know that at the meeting that we were at, we were discussing the band system in the new caucus. All of the attendees were just absolutely flabbergasted. at the proposals.
Okay, well, we need to get something written up about that, and I will send that out to the group because that has like 80 people in it, and so somebody will probably respond. So let's do that like within the next 24 hours if we can. Tell me.
Contact me tomorrow whenever you're up.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be awake. I just need to stop sitting in this chair now at this point.
Yeah.
So.
And lean back like I am.
I know. I need to do that, but it doesn't really work.
You need to put a 20-pound cat on your head, Kelly. That's how Stork does it. Good posture, but
I don't think that will help with
this cat.
I don't think that'll help with brain sinkage.
It helps.
Cat.
It helps everything.
Okay.
It helps posture.
My son brought home a package of hamburger a few days ago that weighed as much as Victor.
All right.
And it's just like,
that is a big cat. Where is he?
He's only. I think the camera makes him look bigger than he is.
Oh, okay.
I have had the police called on me for having a cougar.
What?
They use the word mountain lion.
Okay.
I was living in an apartment, and our sink had a leak in it, ruined the wallboard.
Uh-huh.
And he was able to poke his head through the wallboard, and then kind of little corner-wise through the wallboard into the apartment below us. And a woman was on the toilet, and he's very friendly, and he stuck his head in their bathroom and meow. And I grabbed her daughter. They ran to the bedroom and called the police with their cell phone that cougar trying to break in from the apartment above. They called the landlord. The landlord says, "Do you have a cougar?" And the police are on their way to your cougar. And, I'm like, I have a cat. He's right here. It's on the lease that I can have a cat. And,
oh, my God.
The neighbors moved out. They never believed it was a cat.
What?
I don't even know what to say.
A cougar.
Okay. All right. Very nice.
Like, again, when he's in front of me, I'm actually laying down, so this isn't on my lap. When he's on me, he's actually on my stomach.
Wait, you're laying down. Like what degree angle there?
Yeah, lay back as far as you can go. That's probably about how far I am.
Really? It doesn't look
Now,
like it.
if you were to lay back that far,
Uh-huh.
you would have a 30% increase in the amount of time for your brain to lose.
Oh, okay. Well, I should do that. All right. I've got this crappy IKEA chair here.
We gotta fix that.
I know. Okay. I will actually do it. I promise. I will.
And
I know. You guys
talk
have
to
been
the
telling me
owner.
that for a long time.
Yes.
And there's always that thing where you can lay down and have everything tilted up. The problem is I am fat, but it makes me even look worse when you're looking.
Well, yeah, there were some on Avon's old channel where no one was watching, and I was like on my couch, like this, It wasn't the best, so yeah, try not to do that. But anyway, for all of our.
And now I've moved my camera. My camera's underneath my monitor instead of above it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that is kind of cool. It doesn't look like you're lying down, huh? All right.
No, but I am almost. I'm more than 45 degrees reclined.
Huh. Okay. Pretty cool. Well, John, I saw your Facebook post that you had your office. Are you putting a container for an office?
I moved so much soil today. I am so sore. You can't even believe it.
Oh.
Yeah, well, I was, and then I went to there's a restaurant up there called Grumpy Bears. I go there, and I'm like, yeah, I got my container pad done. He's like, oh, you got a permit? Like, I need a permit to put a container on my property. Oh, yeah, you got to have it 4 foot of concrete into the ground, secured and all this stuff. I'm like, oh, my God, I can't even believe it. I mean, I'll just build a garage at that point. I was just going to drop a container.
So what do you do for insulation for something like that?
You have to spray the inside because otherwise it'll sweat. But I was just going to put the solar panels on top of it and then build the back end into a battery bank. But now, the inspector's all over me, right? The inspector, and I'm out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, I'm seriously 1 hour from anywhere. And he red tags me and he staples this red tag to my table, right? And I'm like, how the hell did you find me? He's like, Google Maps. I'm
like, are you building your own Tesla wall? Do you watch the website for Jehu Garcia? He every Monday he has a. It must be 8 p.m. California time that he has a show on how to build your own power wall.
Yeah, I use 6-volt batteries in series because they charges up and down too fast.
Nice. Well, we shouldn't keep Kelly so long.
That's
Just saying, if they keep having threats between Pakistan and India, this stuff is going to go up in price.
What is that?
Black pepper, restaurant grade.
Oh, okay.
And
so stock up?
Yeah, I would. This is a long supply, but what this is like a $3 here.
We're now doomsday preppers.
Just all we have to have is bad action between the two. Or if India has another drought this summer, price of this is going to triple. So two things could affect it. So I'm just saying, if you like food,
you might have to live without
get yourself
pepper.
some pepper. And
Snork has a bunch of pepper stock that he wants to unload on us.
Actually, that's fine.
It's not share after share at some useless pepper companies. Stuff's going to go up.
Yeah. Alexa, turn on garden.
I've been watching a lot of NDTV because of this Pakistan stuff. And, if you think propaganda is bad in the U.S., go watch some NDTV, which is like the Indian CNN.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They straight up have warmongering generals on there saying, we need to bust up Pakistan. Blah, blah, blah.
And we don't have to have a really large scale exchange for it to be bad for the pepper market, because pepper it's a bunch of little berries, which means it's a bunch of little flowers at one time, and it's a cesium concentrator. So
nice.
The first 2 years after there's any exchange, if even if there's one bomb each, you're not going to want to buy black pepper from India, and that's 30% of the world's black pepper.
Good to know. Jeez.
So for anyone watching, if the world comes to an end, we'll be in John's shipping container with all the black pepper.
Now, is it grown in coastal areas, or is it grown, inland and drier areas generally?
It needs the perfect climates for it are Vietnam.
Oh, really?
So kind of damp.
And the eastern side of India, which is kind of damp.
Yeah. I think you see where I'm going with this.
And there's a problem.
How much of it down from Japan into they've been tracking it, so how much is down there?
Well, there's a problem with Vietnam is getting too wet now because of climate change to grow pepper, and India is getting too dry.
As far as the cesium leakage across
the cesium? The cesium leakage is not as bad as it used to be.
So you can learn anything.
Who's this? Is Temco saying that, or who's saying that?
I haven't even looked for a while. There are some private people that do their own monitoring. The worst is going to be is next summer during the Olympics to promote Japan's current line that they've cleaned Japan completely up. Everything is fine. They basically brought the Olympics in, and they're going to be having them eat food from Fukushima. And they're going to be exercising right by one of the more contaminated areas.
Wow.
I'm guessing that within 3 years of the next Olympics, that we are going to be seeing people that participated in it drop like flies, because the cesium is going to affect the heart the most. The harder you exercise, the worse the cesium gets you. And it'll just eat their hearts out. And I knew that after Fukushima, anybody that was gaijin, white, they wanted to do anything they could to get you on the news eating food. And they had to pass laws that a gaijin could not bring their own food into Japan, because they did not want any Japanese people seeing foreigners bringing food in, because they didn't trust their food.
Okay.
And then to get the trust up locally, they gave away just tons and tons of rice to Nepal in that area, and then brought in rice from the United States, so that they would say they're having this great big aid thing, and they'd use the money to buy American rice, and they ship the Fukushima rice off to other countries for aid.
Oh my God. Ugh.
Well, yeah, we can't delay it much longer here.
Oh, that's okay. Well, I'm glad. Hey, Gordon, it's very cool you came back. I haven't seen you in so long. And Aeolus, are you still here?
He left.
Oh,
He drove.
Okay. At one time he fell asleep, so I wasn't sure if he was still here and sleeping. Anyway, it's great to see you guys, and we'll do it again next Saturday.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
All right.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night,
See you all. We'll figure out the Secretary of State stuff. We're going to do it.
I'm gonna do it.
All right.
See y'all.
All right. Good night.
Night.
Okay. Wait a second.